Presenting ammonia inhalants in power and weightlifting by Anastasia Vinikova, Mary Sanopo, Mohammed Akhtar, and Yung Wang.
Weightlifting is a form of strength training which consists of snatch, clean, and jerk. These movements often require high rates of force production and the skills to execute each lift. Weightlifting is a high power activity and is performed with relatively lower loads compared to powerlifting. The snatch, clean, and jerk are closely associated with explosive strength. Explosive strength training, also known as the peak rate of force development, is associated with the ability to accelerate objects. Explosive strength training enhances the initial rate at which the force is developed. Explosive strength can also be defined as the movements in which maximal or near maximal rates of force development are attained. Powerlifting is a barbell sport based on squat, bench, and deadlift, and is related to maximal strength production. Powerlifting requires short term of high intensity effort. It requires high degree of strength, power, and speed in order to make it lift. Training methods for powerlifting are well suited for development of maximal strength.
So, ammonia inhalants or AIs contain ammonium carbonate, which is a respiratory stimulant, and it's often mixed with some kind of perfumes, which also gives them the name aromatic spirits of ammonia. So, the FDA they allow the use of ammonia inhalants, hence they are sold over the counter in the U.S. So here you can just see a picture of a pharmacy and they're just carrying AIs or ammonia inhalants. However, typically and historically, they have been used in the cases of fainting, lightheadedness, and dizziness. Athletes, however, have been known to use AIs immediately before or during a competition to get a psyched up effect and to increase their focus. So here you can just see a person at the gym and he's just super hyped. Uh, Ammonia salts are known to be used by different athletes such as weightlifters, powerlifters, and they're also used in different sports such as football, hockey, boxing, and MMA, which isn't written on this board right now. But there are very few reported cases of complications due to the use of AIs. But athletes and coaches are highly discouraged from using ammonia inhalants in the cases of possible injuries as they may mask the signs and the symptoms. AIs are not banned for use by the World Anti-Doping Agency, so they're completely cool with it. But the International Powerlifting Federation, their rules say that the use of ammonia inhalants isn't prohibited. They just have to make sure that they do it in a private setting, so not in front of other people. So, ammonia inhalants or salts are viewed as a possible ergogenic aid. And as we know, ergogenic aids include anything that increases performance. So, in this picture, you see a person saying that because of the ergogenic aid, his max squat increased by 50 pounds. So, according to an international survey of powerlifters, they were asked a question of how many of them use ammonia inhalants or AIs, and surprisingly 49% of them said that they do, but 51% said that they don't. But still, it was about 50-50 almost. Unfortunately, despite the prevalence of ammonia inhalants used in sports, there is a limited amount of literature or readings available on the physiological effects of ammonia inhalants with regards to possible increased strength performance. However, the basic physiological changes that occur after the use of ammonia salts have been observed and measured. As it was mentioned above, the ammonium carbonate acts as a respiratory stimulant, and therefore, when someone inhales the ammonia salts, the lungs, nose, and the mucous membranes in the nasal cavity all get extremely and rapidly irritated, which causes a rapid inhalation reflux. So this reflux actually causes the person to inhale involuntarily, and then it's going to continue to stimulate the muscles that control breathing for the person, and that's going to cause them to work faster. So the muscles are going to be working faster, and consequently at the end, there's going to be an increase in respiration. So through this physiological response to these salts, a higher level of consciousness occurs, creating a psyched up effect. So next we're going to look at the psyched up study. There was one study that looked specifically at the cerebrovascular and cardiovascular responses after ammonia inhalation. So one side was cerebrovascular, the other was cardiovascular, and they found that AIs or ammonia inhalants increased three things. The first thing that was increased was the mean middle cerebral artery blood flow velocity, which is also MCAV mean. There was an increase in cardiac output, which is weakly correlated with the change in MCAV mean, and heart rate, but MAP remained unchanged in this case.
The first study we analyzed was called The Acute Effects of Ammonia Inhalants on Strength and Power Performance in Trained Men by Sandra Bartolomeo and others. 20 resistance-trained men with weightlifting experience participated in this study. To be included, they have to have trained a minimum of 3 days per week for more than 3 years. This was a double-blinded study comprised of 3 different sessions, performed in a randomized order by each participant. The 3 sessions included the ammonia inhalant, a placebo, and no inhalant. The ammonia came in tablets that were crushed and placed in a microcentrifuge tube. The placebo was placed in the same type of tube, in liquid form. Each was inhaled for 10 seconds before each attempt for 3 seconds. For safety purposes, the subjects inhale the AI from a distance of 10 centimeters. The 3 tests were all 48 hours apart to allow for recovery. The subjects were asked to refrain from alcohol, caffeine, and resistance training for at least 24 hours before each test. Before each test, they also performed a standardized warm-up. There were several measurements taken, the first of which was the counter movement jump power. Anyone who's taking biomechanics this semester should be having a few flashbacks at this point. They were asked to perform 3 maximum height jumps with 3-minute rest in between. The second exercise was the isometric mid-thigh pull, which was meant to measure the isometric maximal strength. This was performed on a power rack that allowed fixation of the bar at the height of the subject's mid-thigh, while standing on a force plate. They were asked to keep their knees flexed at about 40 degrees and hips at about 55. They performed 3 maximal isometric pulls with 3-minute rests in between. This is also when the peak rate of force development was calculated using a 20 millisecond window. The results were interesting. They saw no significant increase in the counter movement jump or the isometric maximal strength. But they did see a statistically significant increase in the rate of force production in the isometric mid-thigh pull in the trial where the subject inhaled the ammonia salts. Hence, they produced force faster. Therefore, they made a conclusion, or more accurately, they theorized that the ergogenic effect of ammonia salts on the autonomic nervous system, which successfully increased force production, would be more beneficial for weightlifting, as they tend to rely on fast force production in order to succeed. However, they further hypothesized that it would not be beneficial for powerlifting, because it mostly relies on the production of maximal amount of force, which they did not observe in this study. Hence, the second study that we analyzed was called Ammonia Inhalation ... deadlift 1RM in college-aged male and female weightlifters. We had to leave a part of the title out because they gave away too much. We wanted to keep you guys guessing. There were 3 different assessment sessions performed. The first trial was the baseline. The second and third were either the water placebo or the ammonium salt inhalant. Overall, there were 10 male subjects who were all resistant trained. There were also 10 female subjects who were also resistant trained. To participate in the study, they had to have a minimum of 2 years of experience in resistance training. However, none of them were professionals but were recreational athletes. The study was double-blinded for the first treatment or second trial of first 1RM attempt, after which the subjects already knew what they would inhale for the second and third attempts and for the third trial. So they were no longer blinded to the study after first inhalation. For trials 2 and 3, they used a progressive approach to reach 1RM. First, they performed a standard warm-up with hydrants, lunge stretches, dumbbell good mornings. Then they started by performing 2 repetitions each at 65 and 75% of their 1RM taken at baseline. Then 1 repetition each at 85, 90, 95 of 1RM. And finally, 1 repetition each at 100, 102.5, 105, and 107.5 until they can no longer perform a 1RM, so until failure. They inhaled the IA from a bottle 15 seconds before performing the 1RM. The bottle was kept 2 inches away for safety. They also had a 3-minute rest between each attempt in order to aid in recovery. And finally, the results. What we didn't put in the title is that the ammonium inhalants did nothing to significantly increase 1RM deadlift for the AI group compared to the placebo water group. So the authors and us made a conclusion from the findings that may be in line with the findings of the first study, that AIs may be more beneficial for weightlifting versus powerlifting, because powerlifting relies more on maximal strength production and weightlifting relies on producing power quickly. So why is it used in powerlifting? In a review done by Bedry and Ford, they reported that the placebo effect was found to increase performance anywhere from 1 to about 50%. Hence, despite no found statistically significant results, the physiological effects of inhaling ammonium salts, which gives them that more awake and focused feeling, may be just enough to make them feel like they can lift more.
The title of the third study is The Impact of Ammonia Inhalants on Strength Performance in Resistance-Trained Males by Scott R. Richmond and others. Ammonia inhalants has been used for many years, but little is known about their effects on athletic performance. So the goal of the study was to examine the impact of ammonia inhalants on strength performance. The subjects of the study were 25 college-aged males with at least 3 years of resistance training and could perform back squat 1.5 times their body weight and could bench press 1 times their body weight. For the experimental design, Vicks VapoRub was chosen as a placebo because of its strong menthol scent that is comparable to ammonia inhalant. Back squat and bench press were used because they are measures of upper and lower body strength and are also highly utilized in training and correlate to athletic performance. An initial session was conducted to complete initial pre-participation paperwork and estimate the subject's 1 rep max on back squat and bench press. A standard squat rack with a 20-kilogram barbell was used throughout the testing. Subjects were told not to engage in any demanding physical activity at least 48 hours prior to testing sessions so that the central nervous system and muscular system would be fully recovered. They were also told to follow the same dietary regimen throughout the trial and eat a meal at least 3 hours prior to each testing session. Trial 1 was done 2 to 4 days after initial testing. The subjects started with a 5-minute warm-up on the Aerodyne ergometer, followed by 4 warm-up sets of back squat of 2 to 6 reps with 1 minute rest between sets. Two-minute rest was given prior to completing the maximal exertion set. During warm-up, a marked coin was flipped to randomly assign which substance the subject would inhale first. The subjects inhaled either ammonia inhalant or Vicks VapoRub 3 seconds before a maximal exertion set. The subjects then performed back squats in many reps as possible at 85% of the subject's predicted 1 rep max back squat. After the maximal exertion set was completed, there was a 5-minute break prior to the bench press testing. Subjects also did 4 warm-up sets of bench press of 2 to 6 reps and 1-minute rest between sets, followed by maximal exertion set. Subjects inhaled ammonia inhalants or Vicks VapoRub 3 seconds before completing maximal exertion set. They then performed bench press as many reps as possible at 85% of their 1 rep max. Trial 2 was done 2 to 4 days after Trial 1. Trial 2 was identical to Trial 1, but the subjects inhaled the substance they did not inhale during Trial 1. Results showed that no significant impact of ammonia inhalant on back squat and bench press performance. There were no significant difference between the number of repetitions performed in the back squat or bench press after inhaling the ammonia inhalant compared to the Vicks VapoRub. These results further proved that the claim made by the first study that the ammonia inhalant would benefit someone who needs to produce force quickly, such as weightlifting, versus someone trying to produce maximum amount of force, such as 1 rep max. The fourth study is the cerebrovascular, cardiovascular, and strength responses to acute ammonia inhalation by Blake G. Perry and others. Little is known about the psychological and performance effects of ammonia inhalants, so the goal of the study was to establish the physiological response to acute ammonia inhalation and to determine whether the timing of the physiological response corresponds with the performance enhancement. The subjects of the study were 15 healthy males that were actively strength training 3 or more times per week for 1 year prior to the experiment and were also not habitually using ammonia inhalants during training. The subjects were informed of the risks and procedures of the study and was asked to complete a health screening questionnaire and a written informed consent. For the experimental design, participants underwent 2 trials, and the chosen control for the study is mid-thigh pull with no ammonia inhalant. Trial 1 investigated the beat-to-beat middle cerebral artery blood flow velocity, heart rate, and mean arterial pressure response to ammonia inhalation. During the trial, subjects were instructed to abstain from resistance exercise, alcohol, and caffeine for at least 24 hours. Subjects were instructed to put on adjustable headpiece, Doppler probe, finger cup, mouthpiece, nosepiece to measure blood flow velocity of the right middle cerebral artery, blood pressure, and expired gas. Subjects were asked to stand quietly for 5 minutes to collect baseline measurements. After baseline period, ammonia was placed under the subject's nostril and was asked to stand for 2 more minutes. After 5 minutes, subjects completed 2 maximal isovolumetric contraction followed by 2 mid-thigh pulls, each separated by at least 2-minute rest. Trial 2 was done on the same time of the day as the subject's familiarization test. During Trial 2, electrodes were placed on the subjects and was asked to complete 5 trials of maximal mid-thigh pull. Mid-thigh pull were conducted immediately 15, 30, and 60 seconds following ammonia inhalation or no ammonia inhalation. Results showed that the mean middle cerebral artery blood flow velocity and heart rate increased after inhalation, but mean arterial pressure remained unchanged. Ammonia inhalant also had no effect on maximal force reduction. Like study 1, they also found an increase in peak rate of force development.
Ammonia inhalants are usually used during max effort attempts in order to maximize the weight lifted. From my past experience, I have used a couple of times when I was preparing for a powerlifting meet during sophomore year. My friend who was training with me for the same powerlifting meet always had AI with him, and he always let me use his ammonia inhalants. Ammonia inhalants usually comes in small packets, about the size of a salt packet from restaurants. You can break the packet, and when you're about to perform the lift, and immediately you can smell the ammonia. It loses its potency over the time, and it no longer has the same intensity as before. I only use ammonia inhalants for max effort deadlifts. Reason being that the preparation for squat and bench takes way too long before I actually perform the lift. I have to put on my belt and my wrist wraps before I squat because I squat low bar. Same thing for bench press, but no belt. As for deadlift, I only have to put on my belt and some chalk, and the preparation is much quicker. So I like to use ammonia inhalant for that reason. I was on a 12-week training program and performed a max effort deadlift on the 6th week. I had 3 attempts on deadlift, and I maxed out at 425 pounds on the last attempt. I used ammonia inhalant right before I performed the lift, and I think ammonia inhalants helped me to wake up before each attempt and push me to attack the weights. Right after inhalation, you can feel the intense burning sensation in your nostrils and airway. Any sense of fatigue went away for a fraction of the second, and I felt like I could lift just a little bit more than the last attempt. Overall, I think ammonia inhalants is a great ergogenic aid to wake your mind and body up to get ready for your max attempt deadlift or any lift.
So, in conclusion, despite its prevalent use in weightlifters and powerlifters, ammonia inhalants are actually very understudied for their physiological effects on performance. However, based on the scarce data that we collected, the general consensus is that AIs do little to increase maximal strength, yet they did increase the rate of force production for the athletes. These athletes, however, do report feeling more aroused and awake, which allows them to feel more focused on the task. And this type of focus allows many expert athletes to perform very well under pressure. But due to the lack of reported adverse events from ammonia salts inhalation and overall more alert state of the athletes, there is no reason to bar the athletes from using AIs. But more controlled studies still need to be done in order to prove their place.